Spider-Man is the new Drake and Mary Jane and Chloe are the new Uncharted. But in this video, I'll only be talking about the Drake one, so I won't be talking about Lost Legacy. I would rather save my $50 for an $80 game instead of spending it on a $20 game. And I also won't talk about the other game that 5 people bought because I never played it. Anyways, the first game that we have is Uncharted Drake's Fortune, and it sucks. I played this game for the first time in 2020 when the pandemic came out, and it really showed its age. Now, I haven't played any PS2 game, but this is what I'd imagine a PS2 game to feel like. The shooting is horrible, the graphics are horrible, this stupid ass mission is horrible, the game's just poo. What made this game worse for me was setting it to crushing difficulty, cause you can't be good at this game. It's like you're playing Call of Duty, but you're playing in a hardcore game mode where you're 1 to 2 shot, while the enemies have Black Ops 4 health where it takes an average assault rifle 4 shots in the head to kill an enemy. On top of that, they've got the perk Juggernaut, the streak Juggernaut, kinetic armor, triple warzone armor, and an insta-kill drop, every single zombies perk, and even the perks that got cut like Ammo-matic. These guys do not stop shooting. If they had like a zombie shield as well, nobody would have finished this game on crushing. They are in the next 2 games though, but I never played those on crushing. If I played this game on normal difficulty though, I would have had a better time because I'd have time to actually breathe and play the game how it was meant to be played, like an over-the-top action movie. I wouldn't peek for 2 seconds then have to take cover for another 2 hours for me to fully heal. It really ruined the game for me, and I went for it because I planned on getting 100% of the game done. I didn't end up getting the platinum though, because regardless of difficulty, the gunplay sucks. Again, it feels like a PS2 game with how clunky it is, and it really shows its age. But let's talk about the story. Now, I'm not going to deep dish dive into the stories because it's not that type of game. The first 3 games aren't very story driven, and they're more of a turn your brain off and sit through this action and set pieces type beat. So when things like Elena randomly finding Drake in the middle of the jungle happens, I don't really have an issue. But I think the overall story in this game is okay. The one thing I wasn't a fan of though was the zombies, because it just felt out of place for the story it was going for. They were just trying to find the treasure and all of a sudden they had to bring up Nazi zombies. But anyways, the game is also the worst when it comes to the over-the-top action sequences because there aren't many of them. The only sequence that was okay maybe was the Jeep one if you played it on normal difficulty. Everything else was pretty forgettable, like other than the speedboat one, but in a terrible way. Uncharted 1 is easily the worst one in the series, somewhere between bad and not that good, but more on the bad side. So I'd say Uncharted 1 is bad. Next game is Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. This game takes a massive step forward from Uncharted 1 because the game feels and looks like a PS3 game. This game looks better and it's nowhere near as clunky, but with that being said, it doesn't really hold up now. We're in the PS5 generation and games over time have improved significantly when it comes to gunplay, movement, and everything. So looking at it now, the game has aged, but nowhere near as bad as the first game. The combat is passable and I had a decent time with it. But this might also be because of me playing the game on normal difficulty. Since crushing difficulty was an excruciating pain somewhere down in the anal cavity, I decided to bring it down 2 levels and play it on normal, and it was pretty good. Drake can actually shoot people, fight people, peek, take in more than 2 bullets, and kill enemies with a reasonable number of shots. Kinda like what you'd see in a video game. When it comes to the story, the set pieces and action sequences are better than the first one, with the most memorable ones being the train sequence and the one with the helicopter and the falling building. But the story itself was fine, just like the first game. I didn't mind the Yeti thing as much as the zombies, but I still think it's weird having supernatural enemies in the game. It does kind of fit with the game though, but I think when it comes to the story, I would have preferred just having regular humans. But at the same time, the zombies and the Yetis were a decent addition to the gameplay because they added some enemy variety. So overall, I just thought Uncharted 2 Among Thieves wasn't bad. I'd say it's decent. Uncharted 3, Drake's Deception. Now, Uncharted 3 was the first Uncharted game that I played and the first PS3 game that I played since it came with my console. I didn't really care about the game when I got it though because I got the console for Black Ops 2 and I was waiting to play that. But first playthrough, I thought it was okay. And during my second playthrough like 20 months ago, I thought the same thing. The story is Uncharted, so you're getting a very Uncharted story, like Uncharted 1 and 2. But the only thing I wish they decided to do in this game was introduce Sam. They had some flashback sequences with young Drizzy and Sully, and I feel like they could have at least mentioned him so that he didn't break out of the condom in the 4th game. But other than that, I don't really have any issues with the story. I think overall the set pieces and action sequences were better in this game than in 2, but I think the peaks were better in Uncharted 2 with the train and the building. But with that being said, this game had the plane sequence and a bunch of buildings and shit collapsing, and they were all pretty nice. When it comes to the gameplay, it's slightly better than 3 with the new grenade toss feature, but other than that, it's pretty much Uncharted 2. I think that's the reason why most people like 2 over 3, but I played 3 first, and during my second playthrough, I played it right after 2. But I'd say 3 was better because it had slight improvements in like the graphics, combat, set pieces, and everything. I did play this game on hard though, and I found it to be easier than 2, and I played 2 on normal. But at the same time, I remember getting destroyed in that one mission in the sand near the end of the game, where Drake's fighting enemies in the sandstorm with Sully. But that might also be me being young or shit at the game or something. But I gave up and I finished the game within the next year. But second playthrough was fine on PS4. No, like Uncharted 2, I'd say it's decent. But I do like Uncharted 3 more by a bit. But before we get on to 4, I guess I'll just mention that the remaster is meh. The game looks kinda better and it's 60 FPS, but I expected it to look a bit better. But anyway, this doesn't really matter. Overall, I think the games got better over time in almost every single aspect. But let's move on to the final game, Uncharted 4. This is the 5th game in the series and it drops a fat and stinky dookie on every other Naughty Dog game made up until that point. As soon as you start the game, you realize you've been playing Black Ops 3 on last gen and now you're playing it on next gen. It's one of the best looking games of the last generation, only topped by The Last of Us Part 2 and Red Dead Redemption 2, I wanna say. This was also my first PS4 game, so it set my bar for PS4 graphics way too high. Like goddamn, it looks like a movie at times. Some of these scenes look better than some shitty CGI scenes from huge blockbuster movies. Like, look at this. Uncharted 4 looks so much better. But how is the game? It's actually really good. I played it twice, first time in 2016 when it came with my PS4, and second time in 2020 after I traded my copy for Infinite Warfare and got the game through PlayStation Plus. Best trade I pulled in my life. But anyways, I played on normal both playthroughs and it was the best difficulty to play the game, cause it feels like a movie game. The set pieces, action sequences, and combat, 360 insta-swap trick shots, all the other games. The entire chase sequence in the city is just apeshit. It's probably the best chase sequence I've ever seen. Movies won't be able to recreate anything like it because it's straight up impossible, so unless some other game makes something similar, this chase sequence won't ever be beaten. Over like 10 minutes of uncut gameplay and smooth transitions into cutscenes is just insane. And the combat in this game is also better than the previous games. The guns feel better, they look better, they sound better, they taste better, and you've also got stealth and a grappling hook. What would have been nice for the stealth though is if they had some toys from The Last of Us Part 2 like the mines and the suppressor. But at the same time, they have a bunch of takedowns like a jumping takedown, a hanging takedown, through an opening takedown, kick that clown off a ledge takedown, disarming takedowns, and with the regular takedowns you get a different animation depending on how you approach the enemy. And in the shootouts and the chase sequences, you can do a whole bunch of creative shit with the grappling hook. And it also made the climbing levels more interesting. Now I know some people don't like the climbing sequences in the game, but for me it was never an issue. I actually find it to be a good thing, cause I'd rather have that instead of constantly walking or finding a ladder or some shit to climb up a platform. And the grappling hook just makes the entire exploration and combat more fun and engaging. But the weakest part about the game though is the story. The game is more story driven cause it's The Last of Us Part 2 over 2. But not The Last of Us Part 1. It's the Ellie part of The Last of Us Part 2. And at first I'm like, damn, it's pretty good. Now I do wish that Sam was introduced earlier cause it also doesn't make sense how he supposedly died while Nate was an adult with what happened in Uncharted 3. And also why he wouldn't have at least mentioned it to Elena, his wife. When I saw her get pissed, I'm like, okay, this is pretty sick cause he has some problems and shit. But then the next mission, Sully talked her into forgiving him off screen and everything's perfect. If this was one of the older games, I wouldn't have cared that much cause they weren't trying to go for a very grounded story cause the story was just there. But in this game, they put more emphasis into the story, and the issues that would have been extremely minor in previous games are huge. Like bro, this is your wife, and you lied about some job while in reality you were trying to find some treasure, and second, you never even mentioned you had a brother. They've been married for like 10 years, or at least they've known each other for 10 years, but Drake didn't even give her a little tease about her brother. Now, I get that they did this so that Elena gets pissed, but in the end, it literally does nothing, cause she's all over it in the next mission. He did say that he didn't want to talk about it, but still, I don't know how it never comes up in a conversation or something. It's your family member you're talking about. But anyway, that's my main issue with the story. Other than that, the game is spectacular. I liked this game more during my second playthrough because I didn't want to play it during my first playthrough because I got the console for other games, mainly Black Ops 3, but during my second playthrough I really enjoyed the game. Easily the best Uncharted game and the best Naughty Dog game I played. Uncharted 4 is great. But now's the part you've all been waiting for. Uncharted Far Way Homecoming. It has Drake and we are talking about all the Drake games and movies in this video. So how is the movie? Well, I don't know. I'm gonna watch it soon, in like a couple of hours. I'm not gonna be expecting this game to have a crazy story or anything like that, but I do expect it to have some nice action and set pieces. So I expect to see what I wanted to see in the first 3 games. It's definitely not gonna be better than the 4th game, cause movies can't recreate anything like it, but I do hope it's around as good as the 2nd or 3rd game. Subscribe in the meantime though, cause Donda 2 came out, and Kanye will release the album out on streaming services for everyone to listen to if 95% of the people watching my video subscribe to the channel. So make sure to subscribe right now. Alright, later, I'll be back. I'm here from the future and the movie's okay. It's a little worse than what I expected because I expected the action to be good, but it was just okay. The best action scene was the plane scene, but even that is slightly better in the games. I say slightly because the game aged visually, so this movie did have the scenes look better. But the other action scenes were fine. There were some scenes that were underwhelming, like the chase scene at the beginning with Chloe felt pretty short, and the huge fight near the end was shot kinda poo, because there were a lot of zoomed in shots with a lot of cuts. Some people found the CGI to be bad, but I couldn't really notice it. Like, obviously they use CGI, but it just didn't look bad to me. But one thing Sony is horrible at is keeping secrets and plot details in the trailer. In the trailer, you see the 2 ships being carried away after Drake finds the treasure, and it was the final action scene in the movie. Seeing them getting flown away wasn't surprising at all. But I think the last thing some people had an issue with was Sully. Mark Wahlberg plays the character he's always been playing, at least in the movies I've seen him in, but he doesn't seem like Sully at all. Now, I didn't mind them having a different take on the character, but I just would have preferred having the games version, cause it's just another Mark Wahlberg character. Also, I noticed that there weren't a lot of gamers in my auditorium, cause no one reacted to the thing. If you watch the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. But anyways, I think Uncharted is decent. Tom Holland's fine, the action's fine, everything is just fine. If I were to rank everything, I'd say it's in the order in which the games came out, with the movie being between Uncharted 1 and 2. With the games, you get to control Drake instead of looking at Tom Holland doing everything. So for that reason, I'd think it's below 2 and 3. Uncharted 1 is easily last though, cause of how poorly it aged, and Uncharted 4 is easily at the top cause it does everything the best. But that's it for this video. Elden Ring stream in the description. Later.